Can anyone tell me what this big folder is all about? No? Well, let me spill the beans. This chunk of data is the freshest insight into the true state of the Russian economy. And oh boy, does it have a story to tell.
Picture this. Russia was hit with an unprecedented level of sanctions. The experts were all doom and gloom, forecasting the worst.
Russia's currency hitting a 17-month low.
Russian domestic production has come to a complete standstill.
Dramatic fall.
But then something strange happened. Those same institutions that predicted Russia's swift collapse did an about-face, revising their outlooks.
The economy is actually expected to return to growth.
They're still getting everything they need from the West.
Has Russia outsmarted Western sanctions?
The International Monetary Fund now says that the Russian economy will grow by 0.7% in 2023, while Germany and Britain's economies will contract.
How in the world is that possible? It's Germany and Britain that are sanctioning Russia, not the other way around, right?
The Russian economy has become the greatest mystery of our time. Just browse YouTube and you'll find half the videos declaring the Russian economy dead and the other half swearing it's alive and kicking.
The funniest part, even reputable analysts are scratching their heads, some predicting unexpected growth, others a steady decline. I mean, it can be both, right?
Could all this confusion stem from this report? Some say Russia has played the numbers game, manipulating data to look good.
That's weird. That's weird.
But unlike many, I've waded through this 300-page official report, and let me tell you, A, it's not all sunshine and roses, and B, there are some peculiar things I picked up on that shed light on how sanctions might actually be working, but also how Russia might be adapting, sometimes effectively, sometimes, well, not so much.
In this video, I am not just breaking down these numbers, I am weaving them with my own observations from the last 19 months, traveling across Russia and speaking with real people, from farmers and car salesmen to doctors and folks mobilized to fight in Ukraine.
So if you're ready for a journey that's part numbers, part adventure, and all curiosity, then you're in the right place. Together, we're going to unravel the complex fabric of Russia's economy. Buckle up, stay with me, and let's dive in. Alright, this is how we're going to play this. I'm going to walk you through several major sections of this report, each providing a glimpse into a certain sector of the Russian economy. Then we'll see if the numbers add up, and most importantly, correspond with what I've actually seen on the ground. Let's kick things off with industry.
Развитие обрабатывающей промышленности.
Vladimir Putin has recently claimed that the Russian industry has grown by 3% in the first half of 2023. This number corresponds with the latest government reports. Big surprise. Now, 3% might not seem like much, but compare that to Germany, Europe's industrial juggernaut, where manufacturing has been on the decline since the war in Ukraine began. In June alone, German manufacturing plummeted by 1.5%. But wait a minute, don't get carried away just yet. This industrial growth in Russia isn't spread evenly like butter on toast. In fact, over a dozen regions in Western Russia, or Russia's heartland, are witnessing a steep fall in industrial output. Most of these regions are in the northwest, renowned for its endless forests. You know those forests, the ones that used to be the lifeblood of neighboring countries like Finland and Sweden, supplying the wood for, well, practically everything in IKEA's catalog. With Sweden and Finland joining NATO and the EU banning wood imports from Russia altogether, that industry took a hit harder than a flat-packed bookshelf in a moving truck. Talk about the sanctions impact right there. I traveled to this region this winter to see how rural Russians are coping with the impact of sanctions. The locals were literally sitting on piles of logs, selling a whole cart of firewood for just $60. There were mountains of sawdust out in the open, free for the taking. Some folks even used it to power their houses. Well, you know what they say, when life gives you sawdust, make energy. Well, it's not the most efficient fuel, but it's free, which is a nice silver lining given the blow the local economy has taken from losing access to the European market. But let's shift gears and take a look at Kaluzhskaya Oblast and Kaliningrad, areas that have seen a dramatic fall in production too. These regions are home to many car factories that assemble, well, used to assemble European cars. Russian automaking was very much exposed to Western influence, and it's probably taken the biggest hit from sanctions. Again, we can see it in the government statistics. I visited a former Renault factory in Moscow, which narrowly escaped closure by switching to assembling Chinese cars. Essentially, the Chinese are having their cars assembled in Russia using European machinery that was either left behind or sold for 1 ruble. And that's probably how Russia will try to offset the sanctions' impact on its most battered industry. Now let's make a quick stop in Murmanskaya Oblast in Russia's north, where the numbers are pointing to an almost 12% industrial decline. What's interesting about this region, you ask? Well, it's a key producer of mineral fertilizers, namely apatite. And let me tell you, apatite is super important. It's like, I don't know, a superhero for farmers, making their crops grow faster and stronger. Russian fertilizers have actually been exempted from sanctions because of how crucial they are for the world's food security. Russia's a big player in this game, holding a market share in double digits for almost all kinds of fertilizers. But here's where things start to feel a little off-kilter. Despite being safe from sanctions, Russia's fertilizer experts have taken a nosedive, with some kinds plunging by as much as 37%. That alone sparked fears for the future of the global food security. Now, I've seen this movie before. Remember that video I made on Western medication in Russia? Just like fertilizers, Western pills and CT scanners were also exempted from restrictions on paper. But in reality, people on the ground were finding them as scarce as water in the desert. It seems like the devil might be in the details here, possibly with logistics and financial transactions between Russia and the Western world, which are all but non-existent. Sure, you can buy Western medicine or sell Russian fertilizers, but good luck with getting the payment through or shipping it in and out of Russia. Now, can I say for sure that's what happened with Murmanskaya Oblast, Russia's fertilizer powerhouse? No. But what we do see is that they're struggling with their industrial output after more than a year of sanctions. And just recently, Russia slammed the door on a grain deal, which had fertilizer flow as one of its key clauses. Now this puzzle is starting to piece together. So, with falling production in so many different areas, how has Russia achieved this magical 3% industrial growth? The answer is as heavy as it tamed. Literally, it comes from Russian arms production. Regions demonstrating sharp industrial growth have military and weapons-making factories. We're talking about double-digit spikes in production for some regions. Russian officials aren't shy about admitting that the growth is fueled by military spending. Using military production as the spearhead of economic growth is as old as tanks themselves. Just ask the US after World War I and World War II.
Complete and ready to defend America.
I got a first-hand taste of this military-driven boom when I spent a few days with Andre, also known as the cocky lawyer, who's been featured in several of my videos. We went to a military surplus store, one of the many that have sprung up like mushrooms since the war started. Andre has dropped around $7,000 in stores like this on improved gear, from helmets to vests to headpieces and night vision goggles. This gigantic military spending, whether it's a juicy contract with a tank factory or payments to individual soldiers, has created a ripple effect through Russia's economy. Now, it's not just about weapons production. These fingerprints from government spending can be traced all over the Russian economy. Let's talk about construction, shall we? Construction is booming in Russia, but there is a twist. Unlike in previous years, Moscow's pace of building new residential houses is slowing down. Why, you ask? Well, many wealthy Muscovites have decided to relocate to other countries, and there are fewer people eager to move into these shiny new apartments. But hold on, the story doesn't end there. If you dig a little deeper, you'll find sharp increases in construction in the southern regions of Russia, close to the front. Could this be related to building the infrastructure needed to support the war effort? Well, you tell me. Then there is the Far East. A surging construction activity there can be explained by several factors. The new launching pad for Russia's space program in Siberia is in full swing. Just a few days ago, they launched a lunar rover from there. But this also indicates a swift upgrade of the infrastructure needed to haul goods to and from China, Russia's biggest ally now. All this government spending has certainly shored up the economy, cushioning the blow from Western sanctions. But here's the million-ruble question. How long can Russia stay in this game? I mean, unlike some other countries, Russia can't just, print money or increase its government debt without facing repercussions. This is where Russia's staple product comes into play: oil. Well, you know what's slipperier than a barrel of oil? Figuring out how much Russia actually makes from selling it. Russia's finance ministry has dropped a bombshell. The country's oil and gas revenues in 2023 have plummeted by a whopping 40%. Have sanctions worked? Yes and no. This drop stands in stark contrast to 2022, which was, believe it or not, the best year in the history of the Russian oil and gas industry. Thank you, sky-high prices driven by sanctions. Now compare this to 2021 or 2020 and suddenly that steep cliff turns into a gentle hill. Now about the G7 nations and their price cap on Russian oil. India and China are kind of like, what price cap? Instead of following Europe's mission to ditch Russian fossil fuel, they're happily snapping it up. Russia's shadow fleet of tankers is cruising around the world delivering discounted Russian oil left and right. But before we get too carried away, here's a reality check. The ruble has taken a nosedive, losing almost 25% of its value over the past 3 months. The reason? Russia's getting short on foreign cash, dollars, euros, yuans, everything that pays for Russian exports. And that's not me saying this, that's the Russian central bank. In the middle of all this, our main statistical report shows only a 2% decline in Russia's extracting industry, where oil and gas make up a great portion. Well, I know, I just threw a lot at you, so let's try to sum it up real quick. Russia's oil and gas profits, not production, have taken a hit, but maybe not as much as the West would have liked. And the weak ruble? It actually helps the Russian government to keep pumping money into the economy and mitigate the impact of the sanctions, because guess what? Russian soldiers are paid in rubles, not euros. But let's not forget the ordinary folk. For them, a weak ruble means higher inflation, higher prices in stores. So, how do all these numbers and reports translate to an everyday Russian person? Do they feel the squeeze of sanctions on the economic war waged against Russia? Well, here's a little curveball for you. Official stats suggest that the Russians' real income has actually grown by 4%. But you know what? I don't want to just take this at face value. I know that 10 to 15% of my viewership is Russian, so why don't we ask my Russian audience, has your real income grown over the last year? In other words, has it outrun inflation, which is officially around 8% here? Please let me know in comments. Now, there was another peculiar thing I've come across combing through this report. Russian salaries have surged even more by a whopping 15%. Now, that's a growth rate we haven't seen for quite some time. At first, I was like, there's something off. But then something else caught my eye. Unemployment in Russia has reached the record low. In fact, it's so low that it's starting to look more like a labor shortage. Many people have left Russia since the Ukraine situation began, and let's not forget the 300,000 men mobilized last fall. So, what happens when you need more workers and there are fewer available on the market? You have to dangle a bigger carrot. In other words, you have to offer higher salaries to attract the remaining workers. And let's not forget that the drafted men are earning over 200,000 rubles or $2,000 per month. That's almost $3,000 before the recent ruble devaluation. That's not chump change. Remember Andrei, a Moscow lawyer turned foot soldier? Let's say he's not counting his pennies now. He's paid off his loans, shelled out $7,000 for gear, and still has some money left. That also contributes to higher salary statistics. So I'm not saying Russians are swimming in gold, but this shower of government cash has definitely wet some pockets. Now that you've got some extra rubles, what do? Property is still expensive. The choice of new cars is meager. International travel is very complicated. Well, at least you could grab a nice dinner at a nice restaurant. Seriously, as the same stat report shows, Russia's eatery scene is booming, boasting almost 25% growth compared to last year. And not just in Moscow. When I visited my hometown Yekaterinburg, my wife and I couldn't find a table, and it wasn't even the weekend. With all the latest troubles and uncertainty, many Russians are saying, what the heck, let's just go ahead and treat ourselves at this new place around the corner. Or maybe they'd pack up and head for Sochi, Russia's famous sea resort, or even to Crimea. Yes, despite the region being close to the front line and the Crimea Bridge being targeted by Ukrainians, lots of Russians still vacation there. So what's the bottom line here? Every piece of info I've shared comes straight from this official government report. Naturally, one should approach this with a healthy dose of skepticism. Yet I believe there is a wealth of insights in there, shedding light on the dynamics of the Russian economy. Sanctions and everything that comes along with it aren't laughing matter. It's unwise to downplay their impact. So is the resilience of a country with such vast resources. It's, a battle of wills, and trust me, it's far from its final round.